In October 1347, 12 Genoese galleys dropped anchor in the harbor of Messina, Sicily. The sailors aboard were either dead or dying. The Sicilians witnessed terrifying symptoms: dark, painful swellings on the bodies of the infected, followed by severe bouts of vomiting blood. Within 3 days of these symptoms appearing, most patients expired. This rapid spread was enabled by the state of 14th century Europe. Rapidly expanding boom towns were overcrowded and characterized by rudimentary sanitation, where waste was routinely emptied into shared streets and water supplies. The populations living inside these towns were biologically vulnerable. Decades of famine, acute malnutrition, and previous epidemics of typhus and pneumonia had already eroded their collective immunity. At the same time, Europe was emerging from centuries of isolation. A revival in maritime and overland trade connected these dense, malnourished populations to vast international networks for the first time. The Genoese ships introduced a highly virulent pathogen into a population whose biological and social structures were already incapable of resisting a major outbreak. Modern genetic research traces this virulent strain to Central Asia. Ancient plague genomes point specifically to Lake Issyk-Kul in modern-day Kyrgyzstan. This map of the Silk Road trade routes shows how the disease moved westward. Merchants and caravans carried the pathogen from these Central Asian origins toward the critical trading hubs on the Black Sea. By 1346, the plague reached Kaffa. The city was under siege by the Mongol Golden Horde, but the attackers were suddenly struck down by infection. In a desperate attempt to break the city, the Mongol commander, Khan Janibek, ordered his troops to load the infected corpses of their dead onto catapults and launch them over the city walls. The biological attack succeeded. The infection took root inside Kaffa, prompting terrified Genoese merchants to flee the city by sea, unknowingly carrying the bacteria within their ships. These merchants navigated across the Mediterranean, making landfall at major ports like Sicily, Marseille, and Valencia. The combination of medieval biological warfare and active maritime trade transformed a localized outbreak into a transcontinental pandemic. This microscopic image shows Yersinia pestis, the pathogen causing the mortality. Entering the skin, it travels to lymph nodes, causing the swelling of bubonic plague. It also manifests as pneumonic plague, spreading through the air, and septicemic plague, a blood infection causing tissue death. For centuries, the standard historical narrative attributed the spread to black rats and their fleas. This excerpt from a recent scientific study challenges that assumption. Epidemiological modeling shows the plague moved with a speed and geographic reach that rat populations alone could not achieve. Modern analysis suggests human ectoparasites, like body lice and human fleas, were the primary vectors. These parasites thrived in the unhygienic conditions of medieval households, allowing the bacteria to pass directly between people via infested clothing and bedding. The high death toll was the result of a pathogen's biological virulence intersecting with the intimate, shared living habits of the period. As the mortality rate rose, civic order dissolved. Primary accounts detail fathers abandoning infected sons and people locking themselves inside their homes, refusing to speak to the sick for fear of the airborne variant. These organized burial trenches at East Smithfield show the scale of the crisis. Traditional funerary rites were abandoned in favor of massive emergency pits, where hundreds of bodies were layered in organized rows. Desperate survivors turned to extreme religious movements. Flagellants marched through cities, scourging themselves with whips to appease the divine anger they believed caused the mortality. These processions caused such significant social disorder that in 1349, Pope Clement VI issued an official condemnation and ordered the flagellant movement to disband. The physical collapse of the population was followed by the failure of the psychological and civic systems designed to protect it. The final human cost was staggering. Demographic charts show that up to 60% of Europe's entire population was lost in only a few years. This loss created a total economic paralysis. Fields went untended, and production stopped across the continent as the available labor pool evaporated. This shortage shifted the balance of power. Surviving peasants used their newfound scarcity to demand higher wages and greater freedom from the nobility who owned the land. By giving workers the leverage to negotiate for their labor, The plague permanently destabilized the feudal system that had dominated Europe for centuries. The inability of the Church to stop the infection also shifted civic priorities, leading to the creation of the first state-managed health boards and the world's first coordinated quarantine laws. By ending the labor surplus and forcing governments to take responsibility for public health, the plague therefore necessitated a total and complete reorganization of the relationship between the European state and its citizens.